Hello there and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for clicking on our link here and welcome to Petulant Pairings. My name is Ashli Komaryk from Komaryk Communications and Beyond the Wine, where we help wineries and hospitality businesses train their people to go beyond the wine to delight their customers and turn them into raving fans. Today, I am joined by one of Vancouver's leading restaurateurs, Edward Perrow. He is currently the sole proprietor of España restaurant, where we find him today. And you might be familiar with Ed because he's got a rock solid reputation in the restaurant business. And that strong reputation has its roots in rooms like the Bins 941, 942, the tapas parlors, the Fat Badger Gastro Pub, and the Brasserie, and also Uva Wine Bar and Chibo Trattoria. Wow, that's quite a list, quite a resume, Ed.
Yeah, jumped around a bit. I've been doing this for a while, so.
Fantastic, fantastic. And so you're at España, and how long have you been there?
We opened September 13th, 2012, so we're just coming up on 8 years right now.
Oh, that's remarkable too, for a restaurant to have that longevity.
Yeah, in Vancouver, it's a bit of a tentative business. You know, people people open up and shut down pretty quick. So we managed to stick around for a little while so far. So
fantastic, fantastic. And are you doing anything to celebrate the birthday of España?
I'm trying to think of something that I want to do. I'd like to do something, you know, especially right now, because obviously surviving during this time, during the pandemic, has been pretty tough. So it just seems more important to celebrate those little milestones than ever, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe birth month instead of birthday. Fabulous. So thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me today. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on our theme of petulant pairings, because oftentimes, you know, people think of wine as really restrictive and maybe even intimidating, where they ask for guidance. And, you know, if you ask someone what music, you wouldn't, you know, talking about music, you wouldn't ask them what they should listen to. They would tell you what kind of music they like. And yet with wine, we feel like we need to defer to an expert to tell us what we should drink. So how do you feel about wine pairings? And
I find a lot of people feel really uncomfortable about it. And it's quite a shame, really, because it's really not that complicated. It's really like, what do you like? You know, if it tastes good, just do it. Don't forget the rules, forget the red goes with this, white goes with this. And, you know, people will often come in and say, oh, just feed us and give us drinks, right? So then I'll, you know, especially being in a tapas environment. So then you just individual dishes, each one paired with half a glass of wine or a sherry. You know, it's really a lot of fun for me to do that. And you can surprise people, because a lot of the pairings that I like doing are sherries, especially. Right? So I find sherry really pairs well with a lot of foods that people aren't necessarily expecting it to.
Excellent. So, for example, what are some things that you would put with sherries? Because yeah, you're right, it's not common.
Like, sort of some of my favorite pairings would be like a Fino sherry with marinated white anchovies, or Amontillado sherry, which is another dry sherry, is amazing with jamon iberico. Just the two go together so well. It's really like stunning. People who haven't tried it before get really excited about it. And then one of my favorites, another pairing is there's a cream sherries, a blended sherry. So they tend to be a mix of dry and sweet. So cream sherries with blue cheese and honey, again, like amazing. Just flavor explosions in your mouth.
Oh, wow. Oh, that sounds so fun. Fantastic. So what would you say is an uncommon pairing? Like, what would you, so if we want to talk about a petulant pairing, first of all, let's get into the mood. I don't want to, you know, get right to the petulant pairing. Tell me about what your guilty pleasure food indulgence would be.
I don't know, probably, I think deep fried food, like chicken wings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I gotta say, like, when I just want that food craving, it's normally chicken wings and a beer, and it's pretty simple and basic, you know.
Comfort.
Not very healthy, but delicious.
Definitely, yeah, that does sound good. Awesome, awesome. Now, what's the zaniest kind of pairing. Now, and you come from a culinary background. You've got
Right.
culinary genes. Tell me a bit about that.
So yeah, my mom was a chef in London, in Chiswick in West London. So I grew up with just eating good food all the time. I mean, you don't really appreciate it when you're a kid. I know because I have kids and they don't appreciate anything. So, like we had food put on the table that people over here in North America wouldn't necessarily eat. So, my mom would serve us stuffed hearts, kidneys, liver, all that kind of stuff, and that was just run of the mill for us over there. But a lot of people aren't necessarily willing to go quite that far over here. I find, but it's just what you're used to.
True. And also it's about purveyors too. If I had a craving for stuffed heart, I think I'd probably have to go somewhere like, I don't know, Columbus Meat Market in East Vancouver or somewhere very particular to get.
Yeah, I mean, you can find it. You can find it from suppliers. And the thing is, those cuts of those pieces of an animal are really, really cheap, right? Because the demand is so low for it.
Clearly, yes. Understandably. Sorry.
That's okay.
So tell me about a petulant pairing, when something that you've paired with that's just kind of blown people's minds, or that blew your mind, or that you just didn't think would go together.
Well, I think, I was thinking about this sort of question. There's a couple of things that came to mind. One was there was a Moroccan street food dish that we were serving, because a lot of Spanish food is very, influenced by Morocco and spices from the Middle East. And it was a spiced lamb cake that was wrapped in potato. And instead of pairing it with a wine, I paired it with an Oloroso sherry, which is a sort of an oxidized, sort of half sweet, half dry sherry. And the flavors were just amazing. Like the burnt orange and the sherry just really highlighted the nutmeg and the cinnamon in the lamb cake. And it was amazing. People were really, wow, this thing really goes well together.
That sounds amazing. Yeah.
And then we did another dish where we did some it was a grilled hanger steak, so a nice dark red meat, and it was done with a pea puree. And then rather than pair it with a red wine, I paired it with a really bright white Albarino from Spain that had really good acidity. And so you're dealing with like a white fruity wine with like steak, and it worked really well. I think because of the pea.
So what was the reaction when you proposed that pairing? I'm curious because, yeah.
Luckily, I have a lot of customers that come in here that are fairly willing to trust me. So they'll just say, I mean, it doesn't always work. Once in a while, someone's going to say, I don't know about that, but most of the time, but I don't tend to believe that there are very strict rules. It's, what you like to drink is what you like to eat. So
definitely, yeah. And I think that, you touched on a really important concept of trust, and having that conversation, having that rapport with the restaurateur whose palate you trust, whose intelligence you trust as well, to put things together, and your experience. I think would you say you have that relationship with the majority of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is, people coming in here, as opposed to viewing me as an expert or anything, because I still don't feel that way. I think it's more you just going into you're going into a strange town and you're asking someone to tell you where the various different things are within that region. It's a bit like a travel guide, right? So I taste all these wines, I taste all this food, I know what it tastes like. So rather than come in here and pick things from a menu and guess, and especially with Spanish wines, because a lot of people don't know about them. Rather than just guess, they can say, well, this is what I like, this is where I like to go, and I can say, well, let's steer them in the right direction, right? So I like to give tastes of things to people and say, well, what do you think of this? And that then becomes a real solid experience for them, because they get to try things that they haven't tried before. They say, oh, I went out for dinner, and rather than have my whatever JLo or cab, I had a garnacha from Catalunya in Spain, and it was amazing. So
I love it, and I love the idea of the guide rather than the expert. And that's exactly the idea around demystifying wine and making it so approachable. And when you've got your trusted guide that you're relying on, who's saying, hey, give this a try, you might like it, but gives you permission to not like it, and you've not committed to buying a bottle or even a full glass.
Exactly.
I think I love it. I love it. So what's on today? What's on special today?
Today, actually, we've got a slightly unusual cut of meat. So we're doing a pork collar chop. It's quite fatty, but really, really delicious. The fat's really well integrated. And that'll be done with some kale. It's cooked down with tomato and anchovy. And then it's finished with a little tomatillo mojo. So a bit like a tomatillo salsa. And then some toasted almonds. It's really, really good.
And what are you going to offer to pair with that?
So I paired that yesterday. We ran the same special yesterday. I paired for the one woman who asked me for a pairing. I gave her a glass of it was 100% Tempranillo from the region of Toro in Spain, from a winery called Emilia Mora.
And how did that go over?
She loved it.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. So.
Awesome. So have you had any crazy experiences with wine pairings in your experience in España or otherwise, other places?
I did a really interesting tasting at Le Crocodile, actually, and I had I was lucky enough to be invited to a tasting by the winemaker from Pfaffenheim, which is a winery in Alsace, and he brought in some 25 and 30-year-old Pinot Gris. So people don't think of white wines as aging, but these were Pinot Gris that were 30 years old, and they were golden yellow in color. And we did it with a little seared foie gras, and it was dynamite. It was amazing.
Oh, that does sound memorable. Wonderful. And I have a couple more questions for you before I let you get on with your work. I wanted to ask you if you could pick a person from history, celebrity from history, that you could dine with. Who would you love to share the table with? And why would that be?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are going to say such and such a chef or such and such a writer. I would probably pick someone like Marilyn Monroe, right? Stunning, amazing to look at, but also really I just love to know her story. Right? I think she really sort of came across as she was a bit of a bimbo, but I imagine she's probably actually very intelligent and quite interesting. So I think that would be really quite an interesting dining partner.
Oh, interesting.
And she's very intelligent.
That, yes, the eye has its part too, yes.
Right.
Excellent. Oh, that's a good one. That's great. Yeah. And my last question for you, Ed, is of all the wines that you've tasted, and if we say that, wine is like people, it has its characteristics, it's got its boldness or its reserved quality or its loudness or its fleeting nature. Is there a wine that you would say shares the same character traits as you have?
As me personally?
If you had to identify with a wine, which wine might that be?
I think it would have to be something fairly young, not aged, because although I'm getting older, I'm still quite juvenile in a lot of ways. So yeah, something sort of young and fresh that's not too jammy, a bit more old world, a bit more reserved. I'm not quite fully North American yet. I'm still a little bit, the English, don't speak too loud, don't get in anybody's face. And so that sort of, maybe that would be it. I don't know.
Are you a red or a white?
I think a red. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
A little bit oaky.
Okay, so still young. It's got a lot more aging to do, but already giving some good quality.
Exactly. Something that's probably immediately pleasing and just not that deep. Would probably be it.
I love it. I love it. Well, that's a great note to end on, Ed. Thank you very much for your time today.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, and have a great night. Look forward to seeing you in España soon. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ash.